And Sean, you helped me a lot the other day. I was even early to get the kids. So, thank you.
Okay, guys, we're on live.
Okay.
Okay, you're all ready? I'd like to call the regular council meeting of March 8th to order. And first item is approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next is the minutes.
Move adoption of minutes.
All in favor? I'm going to start tonight off really well. Carried. Next, we have that council received the delegation from Steve Morgan, Cumberland Wetlands Working Group.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Welcome, Steve.
Oh my goodness, am I on?
Yes, you're definitely on.
Okay.
Welcome
All right.
back.
That's great. Well, I want to thank, first of all, the mayor and council and staff for allowing me this time. I appreciate that, and I will attempt to make the best possible use of it. What I'm going to do this evening is I'm going to share a couple of photographs. I'm going to show you some maps, and I'm going to then show you a revamped little video that Peter Murray did, a lovely little piece. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and share my screen. And what you should see is a photograph. And is that showing up for you?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. What I thought I'd do is I just have 6 photographs to quickly take you through, just to give you some context for the areas that I'm going to be talking about on the maps. So this is the ravine portion of the park, and you recognize those sandstone cliffs, and all of the trees were sort of standing towards the bottom of the ravine. Again, these are the sandstone. Make a note that the sandstone is quite fractured, which is pretty typical of this area. Lots of ferns. It's very wet in there, and you can see down at the bottom. We're looking down into the ravine now. We're probably 30 or 40 feet up. There's a ephemeral wetland that's down there. These photographs were all taken just a few days ago. This is the upper part of the ravine. This is the Sedge Wetland. There's Whiskey, our mascot dog, in the middle of the whole thing. And it's an open area. You can see there are no trees growing in here because it's too wet. And those are all sedges. And these are hidden, but there are about half a dozen of these, and they're really quite lovely in the parkland. This is more of that Sedge Wetland. And even in the summer, in the depth of summer, it's still quite muddy. Yeah, this photograph was taken fairly recently. This is the trail up at the top of the ravine. And this is an area, I believe, that is slated for development. And one of the big concerns I have is that various times the developers' plans have shown a walkway along the ravine and along both sides. And most recent plans have not shown that walkway, but this is really a nice, a lovely walk up there. And I'll show you where this is when we get into the maps. And finally, this is one of the ephemeral wetlands. Ephemeral wetlands are just wetlands that don't exist all the time. They're there when the forest is the wettest, but they serve a very important function to slow the water down. They're like storage tanks. They gather the water and then they slowly release it into the wetlands. And finally, some more ephemeral wetlands down at the bottom of the ravine. So those are the photographs, just gives you some context. And now I'm going to go into the maps. So here's our lovely Cumberland, and it's right in the center of the map there. You can see Comox Lake is this white area over here, and I'm going to zoom into Cumberland. And I know a few of you have seen these maps before. These should be familiar, but this is the town of Cumberland. This is the Coal Valley Estates development area over here, and this striped area is the area in question. This is the area to be developed by Coal Valley Estates. As we zoom in a little bit more to this area, you can see a couple of things for context. This is Dunsmuir Avenue. We call it Down Camp Road. This is the Lake Road. And there are some wetlands in here and water courses. So the area that is parkland is actually designated by the by the village is right here. So all of that area is parkland. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fade the map out a little bit so that we can see this area better. So that I've now faded out the aerial photograph and we can see the area in development. So this is all parkland. This is the area that's called the linear park, and it's part of a biodiversity corridor that was negotiated with the developer early on when we were working on the Natures Without Borders report. This is what we call Bear Park. That's where the old orchard is. This is the ravine portion, and then this is the wetland, the more flat wetland portion. So if you take a look at this, it looks fairly flat. What I want to do is I want to show you a little bit about the topography, the lay of the land. These red dots represents escarpments or quite steep areas. They're essentially cliffs. So there is a cliff that runs right along the edge of that parkland, and it's quite steep. And those of you who have walked there, you know you don't want to fall off of it. There's also another cliff right here, right in the middle of this development area, and there's another cliff over here. There are also some areas that are very steep, and I've marked those here. So these are very steep areas. I call very steep anything that you couldn't walk up. You know, you basically couldn't get up and down this without some kind of technical equipment, or if you were like a 12-year-old teenage boy trying to show off. They're very steep. And then there are some areas that are sloped, and the sloped areas are around here. What you notice is that the park portion of the ravine is only partially protected. This slope in here represents the entire ravine. So the ravine doesn't just sort of start on the edge of where the park is. The ravine actually starts back here, and it's quite steep. And so in order to build, I'm not quite sure how the developer is going to do it, but they're probably going to have to put walls in here, put concrete blocks or something in here to shore this up. But it is from pure biological point of view, it's utterly inappropriate that they develop in this area because it's really part and parcel with that ravine area. Also, over here is quite steep. There's some steep areas and then sloped areas here, very steep, and this area as well. So that's sort of the topology, the lay of the land. I'll talk a little bit about the natural features here. There is first of all, there are water courses in here. Those are all the red areas. And there are also wetlands. And the wetlands you'll be familiar with are mostly this area here. This is the wetland across the street from, it's part of the entire wetland complex that runs all along Lake Road and Dunsmuir Avenue. And this wetland down here that I'm highlighting is actually fed partially from all of the runoff that runs across Camp Road into this area. If you've ever been driving down Dunsmuir Avenue during a heavy rainstorm, you'll see a lot of water coming across there. And then, of course, there's a conduit here, and that conduit runs through the escarpment, and then it runs into the wetlands out here. So there's a lot of water from here that goes over here, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. So you've got the water course, and then you've got some natural features in here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the upper part of the park. And keep in mind, this is parkland. This is actually designated by the province of BC as park. There are, first of all, a lot of ephemeral wetlands, both within the park as well as outside of the park. A lot of these ephemeral wetlands are down at the base of the escarpment. Water runs down and fills these ephemeral wetlands, and then they slowly drain this way and into the other wetlands in Cumberland. There also are some sedge marshes. Those photographs that you saw of the sedge marshes, those are all in this upper section, and they're right here. The important thing to notice is that this area is wet, but it's fed from this area right here. All of the water that comes down here feeds into these wetlands, and then the water here slowly gets into the wetlands down below in Chinatown. There's also a big wet forest here, and this is the big wet forest. And what a wet forest is, it's a big water tank, and it stores all the rainwater, and it's a whole series of ephemeral wetlands. And then over the course of the spring, the water slowly drains down into the wetlands. So that's sort of the natural features and the geographic features. So there's this steep escarpment, there's a deep canyon here that extends into the area to be developed. There are these steep areas here. There's a very steep area here. And all of this is really about water. It's about what the water does. So I'll turn off this wet forest here so we can see a little bit more. Now, the first thing to notice is that we have blasting that's been proposed by the developer. And I just want to bring your attention to where that proposed blasting area is. This is the proposed blasting area, part of it. And you'll notice that it runs right up to the edge of the escarpment. That's all that fractured sandstone rock wall right there. And this is all supposedly going to be blasted. I'm not a geologist, but I can't imagine that that's a good thing for that wall. I just can't imagine how you can preserve this park by doing all of that blasting. So there's proposed blasting there. There's also all of this area is proposed blasting, and this is proposed blasting. And these are all taken from the maps that were supplied by the developer. So that's something to keep in mind is if you're going to blast this area, it's certainly going to have an effect on the geology of this area. I'll turn off the proposed blasting. There is also an area that already has been approved for blasting. That's this area up here. And that has been approved, although I think it's been a while since any blasting has actually taken place. The other thing is there's a valley floor here that runs along here. This is all supplying water to this area. The developer has plans, and here are what their plans are. This area here that's green, that's all multifamily housing. So multifamily housing is going to go in. There's some extremely steep areas here. I am presuming, and I don't know this for a fact, that blasting will have to take place in order to turn these into habitable areas for the multifamily housing. There is also senior housing. I'll turn that on here. There's the senior housing area. Again, the senior housing area runs right up to the edge of the escarpment. And as I said before, there once was a map that actually showed a walkway all around this park, and I haven't seen that. I think that's been deleted from the developer's plans. I haven't seen it on the recent dwellings. And finally, there's a commercial residential area here. Again, that commercial residential area runs right up to the edge of the escarpment. So that's what the developer's plans are. There is a buffer around this area here. But there is no buffer around the canyon part of this park, nor is there, and it shows that the development that the developer has in mind is actually going to run into this steep area that's really part of the canyon. So I'm not sure how they would develop in that steep area that's part of the canyon, but it certainly would destroy a lot of the value of the canyon because it's about half the canyon right there. The other area I want to bring your attention to is a recent map that was submitted by the developer in this area right here. This is the upper part of the ravine, and the green striped area we're looking at right now is the natural wetland. This is where a lot of those sedge wetlands are. A lot of those ephemeral wetlands are in here. The proposal by the developer, which sort of astonished me, was that they were going to expand the size of the wetland and turn it into that. And essentially it would become a storm drain. It would become a storage for high water events. Now, I want you to keep in mind that that will utterly change the hydrology of this area. So that sweet little sedge wetland that you've got there is not going to withstand this being used as a storm drainage area. The other thing is that the water that flows into here is actually going to be flowing in from these multifamily areas. It's going to be streets. So the quality and the quantity and the timing of the water is going to be very damaging to that wetland in there. I mean, I can't imagine how it can survive. So there's the original wetland, and then there's the area that the developer is proposing that we extend it into so that they can use for I'm presuming for stormwater runoff. And that's not clean water. That's water that's run off of streets and things like that. It would flow into this area, and then they've put in a couple of man-made features. There's a control manhole here, and there's a proposed outlet here. So essentially, the stormwater would be stored in this area. It would then be released into the ravine, and the ravine would become nothing but a sluice to take that stormwater and dump it back out. So I'm very concerned that this is parkland. This is our parkland, and this parkland as such needs to be protected. And you really can't protect the parkland unless you protect the sources of water, both the quality and the timing. And that's something important too, is that water, there's not just the quality of the water, but there's also the temporality of the water, or the time when it arrives. And it's important that if you're going to maintain these wetlands intact, that both the quality as well as the timing of the water have to be maintained as well. They did some more some work. They divided this area into some hydrology areas, and they did do some hydrological assessment. But all that hydrological assessment told me was that basically the water from the multifamily houses was going to be flowing into these natural areas, and they were basically going to be using natural areas as storm drainage. So I would, there's other information to look at, but I think it's really, this is just really important, is that the topology of the land, the lay of the land, really is not taken into account with their development plans. The developers are going to develop in some steep areas, in some areas that make up this this ravine. They're going to change the hydrology of the area such that you use these natural features as storm drainage, and they're going to be blasting adjacent to this rock wall. Before I do the little video presentation, I just want to pause for a moment and ask if council has any questions that they would like to ask.
And members of council, I do have one question first. And if we were to stop the blasting on the ledge, how far back would you see that going?
If we were stopped is that in this area right here?
No, up at the seniors one there, along that ledge. Actually, all of them.
Oh, okay, right. How far, are you saying how far back would you have to stop the blasting in order to protect the,
Yeah.
A geologist would have to tell you that. I'd lack the expertise to be able to tell you that.
Okay, thank you.
It's going to really depend on the nature of the rock that's in there, how that rock spreads the blast waves. You know, our experience before, I know, with blasting was that it really fractured the rock and changed the hydrology when they blasted. So it's kind of a crapshoot, but a geologist, and that brings up a really good point, Mayor, which is we should have a geologist looking at this stuff.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Councillor Brown, you're on the top here on my screen.
Yes, thanks. Wow, Steve. That's great. Just helping with the maps. It's always been really challenging to understand the maps as they come in, because it's all segmented into separate maps. So seeing everything together really helps us with the perspective. And thank you for pointing out the fact that the stormwater solution that's proposed is actually putting stormwater into our park, which then disqualifies that donation as parkland, I would assume, because it's being used for stormwater retention. So we would need to replace that with different park or stop the stormwater retention from happening in there. Yeah, and I guess I'm wondering if anybody's measured the height of the ravine of either of those two steep, on the top side, those two steep cliffs, how far down that is. You said at one point about 30 feet. Do you think that's what the total height is?
That's a ballpark figure. No, it really needs to be measured. It's not a difficult thing to do, but I'm just sort of guessing at this point.
Yeah, sounds close.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Sproul. Your mic's not on. Can you get your mic? There you are, you're on now.
Okay, thank you. So am I to understand that the green is it all multifamily, or just within these strange shapes with the black dots? Is that where the housing will be actually arranged on there? Is that the shape of the wetland?
No, the strange shapes with the black dots are steeply sloped areas. Let me turn those off.
Oh, right.
You see,
Right.
that's topology,
Yes.
right? No, the multifamily, as far as I know, will go on in all of this. Now, in a previous presentation, the developer did propose to give this little section of land here to the village as park. That was It's really steep. It's virtually unbuildable. So it's not, it doesn't surprise me that he offered to give this little section here.
There is one small flat area that he said might do for soccer, but it's right on the edge of that cliffy thing, and it's a big drop down to below. But it didn't look, I mean, I'm not to pass judgment, but it didn't look very habitable. And isn't it very damp down there? It seems
Down
like a lot of
in the wetland.
in this, well, yeah, in the wetland where it says multifamily in the lower portion. Seems to me it's really
down here.
swampy.
Oh, yeah. This is where that wet forest is. I'll turn the wet forest lead again. That's all right there. That's all wet forest. It's quite wet.
That's right.
Yeah, it's very
Yes,
wet.
I planted all that area with the tree planting company that I worked for in 1987, and it was very wet and swampy and everything.
Very boggy.
But anyway, that is.
If you're going to build there, it's going to have to really be filled in, and which would totally destroy its value as a wet forest. Just saying.
Definitely.
Anybody else? I can't see Councillor Kettler. Councillor Sullivan?
Hi, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I'm just hoping that everybody from Waco is paying attention to this presentation because I feel like you're just reiterating council's direct concerns with this property. And I'm really happy to see it so plainly displayed like this. And we've been trying to hold their feet to the fire about exactly what you're talking about. So this is just more ammo for the arsenal, hopefully. It's a great concern, that steep base for sure, which is why we keep demanding geology reports. We have yet to see.
Councillor Kettler, I can see you now.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. And thanks, Steve. I know you've put a lot of work into the mapping and site visits and all of that. I really appreciate it. I think it's great for people to be able to see this park in this manner.
You're welcome. Sure.
So I was going to ask about the pond that they want to create. What are your thoughts on the opposite happening though? Because they could technically just, because they're supposed to control the water on the property, the storm water. And so they could technically just take it all, pipe it all off site. And so I just wanted to hear what you think about how that would affect the wetland area.
Well, this is a water course. This runs down here. Oh, this whole multifamily area basically feeds this. So if they decide to pipe it off site, obviously it will starve this area and it will no longer be a wetland. Now, not only will it starve this area, but if I zoom out a little bit, you'll see there's a wetland down here. This water goes into this wetland, it goes in these wet forests, and eventually it feeds this. So it would also change the hydrology of the existing wetlands that are down here. Now, if they do that, we'll know it because we're measuring these on a weekly basis. But you have to be very careful to make sure the timing and the direction of the water stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that. Yeah. So, I mean, we know that it's a balance, right? We can't, we don't want to remove all the water, but of course we don't want to flood the area with untreated street water either. So I think the way that nature does it is really great by the slow infiltration. And so I'm sure there's ways that we can mimic that. But we would need professionals to be able to assess that, and I don't think that has happened. But we've known that this is coming for a long time. The effects on the water flow and the effects to Camp Road properties has been on our action item list for many years. And so we've done many phases without dealing with it. And now we've got to this phase that we're directly adjacent and now have to deal with it. And so the developer has pulled that the last application that you're referencing with the multifamily and the seniors housing. That's not currently before us because it's been pulled. And that's because it's a difficult piece of property now that we're dealing with, right? This ecologically sensitive area council would like to see it have site adaptive planning, so that we're not doing what we've done in the previous phases of just blasting flat and building homes. We need to do it in a more sensitive way, and so I think that's what we're facing, the conundrum we're facing right now.
You can't, I don't think you can do your planning on a piecemeal basis. You can't plan this little area and plan this, because it's a system. It's a great big system.
Yes.
And one area flows into another area, flows into another area. So site adaptive planning, of course, would be really the approach to take, but looking at the entire site. And of course, there are other wetlands too. Here are the wetlands up in the Bevan Kindle area, you know, also owned by the same people. If you're going to preserve these, you've really got to have a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and we are affecting the wetlands on the other side already by the development. We have our stormwater going into that system now from the current development. So yeah, we do need more holistic planning.
I will say that I had to do all of this mapping because the types of maps that the developer has been supplying, they're different every time you get a map, and it's very difficult to take two maps and compare them to each other because the scale is different. Some of them, the quality of the map is so poor you can't read some of the fine print. I would really be quite critical of the maps they've supplied, because it makes council work extra hard to try to do their jobs. So what I've done is nothing. You know, they start off with maps like what I've got here, and then they turn it into paper. Well, they really should be supplying you with the electronic map so you can do the same thing I've done here. And end of soapbox. But really, they're professional people. They can supply better quality maps than you've been able to get from them so far.
And that leads me to my other question, and that was, and you've touched on it, that you believe that could be developed under site adaptive planning, and that it would meet all the requirements that we would want to implement. Okay. I know you're not a developer, but yeah. Do you think that is possible to have that here on this piece?
Absolutely. I do. You know, I'm a disciple of Will Marsh, and I don't know if you guys know Will Marsh, but he worked on the OCP 3 OCPs ago. He is a certified landscape architect. He's a UBC professor, and he did many projects using site adaptive planning. It doesn't always come up with the most number of lots for the developer, but what it does is it's a way to achieve compromise between protecting the natural environment, allowing the developer to develop their property in a profitable fashion, and keep the village itself intact, and keep these amenities, which, keep in mind, these parks are amenities for the people in Cumberland, keeping those intact and worthwhile going into.
And I agree with you. It's not always about how many you can get on the property. It's what you put on the property to make it so people want to move there and stay there. And they're very proud of what they've bought into. Yeah, times have changed, and they've changed for the better.
Times have changed. And frankly, these things could be amenities for the people who buy lots there. That's my feeling.
Yes, they certainly could. Well, thank you very much, Steve, for all your time in putting all this together. You've done an excellent job. And I think a lot of people will understand it a lot more better than they did in the past.
Great. Thank you very much. I just have a very brief video now to play for you, and then I'm done. And thank you for your time. Can you see me?
I can see the map.
Okay, great.
On Vancouver Island, in the village of Cumberland, is a hidden place. A magic place. A place unchanged. Verdant wetlands. Footpaths through quiet alder forests. A deep ravine with sandstone walls full of ferns and maples. It's a very special place. See if you can find it.
Thank you very much, Steve. It was great to see it as is. Have you shared this with Co Valley video?
No,
I think maybe we should.
I would be happy to do that. I'd be happy to go through my whole mapping presentation with them. I just don't want them knowing where I live is all.
I don't think that would be a problem, but I think it would be well worth it to share.
Well, if you can set that up, Mayor, I'd be more than happy to have a chat with them.
Okay, I will do that. I'll put
Great.
that on my list of things to do.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have a copy, Steve, or was that all you? I'd love to have a copy of the maps, the overlaid maps. So
I can get you PDF files of the overlaid maps.
that would be great.
Okay, good. I'll do several with different overlays turned on and off.
Awesome. Thank you.
That would be great. Fantastic.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to unfinished business. Mike Keohane, board member of the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition regarding active transportation infrastructure discussion. And this is under unfinished business, and there is a recommendation there. If you would like to discuss further, or yes, Councillor Brown?
I just wonder, I'm happy with the recommendation, but I wonder if we need to include any updates to the roads master plan. I'm not sure how old our roads master plan is, whether that would be helpful so that when we're looking at implementing those pieces that we're also looking at cycling options.
I think that would all come under, yes. Clayton, do you have an answer to that? Would that also be added to, or is that fine?
I think that it is outlined in there. I think we're okay with what is. So just you're looking for a, Councillor Brown, sorry, just re-explain that one again.
I'm just wondering, I know we have a roads master plan, but I think it's quite old now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure it's got any cycling infrastructure in it. So I wanted to make sure that when we're looking at implementing that master plan, that we're looking at cycling options as they come up. So maybe it's included in the future village transportation master plan, if that's the route we're going. Are we doing another roads plan, or are they all going to be mushed together? Or
it would be part of that. The roads plan will be reviewed as part of that transportation master plan, which does include what's mentioned here, the potential cycling network. So yeah, it would fall under that now.
Great, thank you.
Okay, somebody like to make the recommendation?
Sure.
So I'll move. Sorry, go ahead.
But I think you said it first.
That council continue to support and participate in the regional active transportation project led by the CVRD. Also, that council commits to including cycling infrastructure considerations as part of the future village transportation master plan, and that council directs staff to monitor and report on any potential cycling infrastructure funding opportunities.
Councillor Sproul, you're seconding that? All in favor? Carried. Under correspondence, Cumberland Lake Wilderness Society requesting a letter of support for a Canada Healthy Communities Initiative grant application. That is request, and that council received the correspondence from the Cumberland Lake Wilderness Society requesting a letter of support for a Canada Healthy Communities Initiative grant application. Sorry, I didn't finish the first part.
Move
Move
receipt.
receipt. Second.
All in favor? There is a recommendation there.
I will move that council support the application from the Cumberland Lake Wilderness Society for funding from the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative for a waterfront upgrade project to include upgrades to the picnic shelter and a new nature playground at Cumberland Lake Park.
Second.
Seconder. Any further discussion? Seeing none.
Aye. Yeah.
Did you
I
want
just
to?
wanted to say yay. Well, much needed.
Anytime there's grant
Thank you.
money, let's apply.
That's right.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Next, reports. The council received development permit and development variance permit 2781 Maryport Avenue referral to APC report dated February 23rd, 2021.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight I have a referral to ABC, as you mentioned, for a development permit and a variance permit. So this is for a property on Maryport that has an existing structure. So an existing ADU that the owner is looking to legalize. And with that change in use comes the requirement to also vary the rear setback. So it was originally, the structure was built in 1984 as a garage and has been on the property since then. And it has, it would have been legally non-conforming if it had remained a garage, but because they want to legalize it, they're applying for the variance to vary the rear setback. Yep, nothing crazy about this one. Pretty straightforward. Just a referral to the APC for the details on the infill guidelines.
Any questions from council members? No, someone like to move it then?
I'll move that council refer the application 2021-02 DV for a development variance permit on the property described as Lot 9, Block 12, DL 21, Plan VIP 522A, 2781 Maryport Avenue to the Advisory Planning Commission for a recommendation, and that council waive the requirement for a neighborhood public meeting for the development permit.
Seconder, Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried.
Yeah, they're just going to talk about the.
Yes? Are we moving along? Did somebody say something? No.
It was
Okay. Next, that council received the Village of Cumberland Investment Attraction Action Plan report.
move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, Kaylin.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Pleasure to be in front of you again. As warned, this one is now on your desk, the investment attraction piece. You've heard me talk a lot about this one. This is one of the main documents that's helped sort of steer us over the last little while, also as well as helping within the Bevan scoping project, as well as in our website development. But this is the investment attraction plan, which essentially provides a guide for and plan for how the village can go about increasing our investment attraction options. You see within the recommendations, I've asked you both to receive it, but to direct staff as well to incorporate this into our sort of our operational, to adopt it into our planning processes with economic development, and we'll report back on how this is being implemented, and they'll be tied into your strategic priorities, of course. But again, the purpose of this report is to guide investment attraction for the village. It was done so both with a big review of our existing planning documents, our OCP, our economic development strategy. So it's aligned with those types of things. It involved extensive interviews with Cumberland businesses. It's been through the village's economic development steering committee a number of times. And so it has had great input from our community on this. And simply what it does is it looks at our strengths, our weaknesses, and the opportunities available to us as a community as we grow our economic diversity, and provide some really important, interesting stats around the type of community we know we are. And then the plan essentially just provides some guiding opportunities as where we can improve our opportunities, the things that we wanted to do is diversify our tax base, diversify job opportunities within our community. Both can how we do that internally with our own available resources, but also identifying some potentially external or ongoing relationships through regional and island type initiatives that can keep us going. So it's there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, we'll go around the table. So we'll start with Councillor Sproul.
You're muted, Gwen.
Okay. Yeah, there is some really good, it's a really fulsome plan. So thank you for that. Good branding ideas. I can think of so many we could, you know, like this place is made for for branding, so many things. Very young population. There's been a lot of interest from investors, and we have a lot of land zoned light industrial, and it's been very frustrating to me over the last 20 years to not see it moved ahead. And I think still kicking out. I think there's so much to see in this report, but anyway, we have a bright future. Thank you.
I agree. One thing I'll get from this report is it probably outlines a lot of stuff we already know. And the stuff that we've been talking about as staff and council for the last little while since I've been around. And both as our brand as a community, we're very aware of what it is. And we have new things that are coming out of it, like our new business association stuff, which are only going to help strengthen those types of ideas. It talks about our young community, as you mentioned, Councillor, and talking about incubating that talent that we're inheriting. So these are talking points that I've spoken to a lot. And so this document really frames a lot of things that we know about our community and then know where our opportunities and strengths and weaknesses are, and gives us a chance, an idea about how to go about making benefit out of them.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Worship. Yeah, I just think it's fantastic. Anything we can do to inform the investors coming into the community about what we stand for and what we're looking for moving forward is going to help. Anything to help guide any investment towards the Wetlands more wholly, and knowing what they're getting into is certainly welcome. So I'm really happy to see this move forward. Great to see. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Councillor Kettler.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Kaylin. I know that you've been working very hard on all this, and it looks great. I think one of the things that I felt really sort of summed up our situation was on page 38, the sustainable development of employment lands. It says Cumberland is well positioned to develop its industrial, commercial, and residential lands in the coming decade, but infrastructure constraints, environmental concerns, and heritage values underlie the need for a sensible managed development. And I thought that was a very, aptly descriptive paragraph for where we're at right now. One of the other things I was thinking is that sort of on the attraction side, I know we have limited resources, and I would like, as the other councillors have mentioned, to focus that as much as possible on the industrial lands and growing that tax base. I think that's going to be the most helpful to us, and maybe focusing less so, like on page 46, we have the development of the website and the living in Cumberland part, and I know that that's sort of the great thing right now because we have so many amenities. It's an attractive place to live. It's easy to promote, but maybe we could tone that down a bit because it's kind of selling itself right now. We really have, I think, as many communities on the island, just a very noticeable influx of people. And so, I feel like the attraction part, we really want to focus the attraction of commercial and industrial business owners to Cumberland, as opposed to residents necessarily. I think that part is taking care of itself. So put our sort of limited resources more into bringing in industrial customers. But in line with our OCP and our other guiding documents, right? Which is mentioned throughout this document as well. So that's great, and I really appreciate that.
Good. No, I wholeheartedly agree, Councillor. One of the challenges with the industrial lands is that we don't own it. And so we have to be mindful that I'm not promoting somebody else's development and somebody else's business. Mm-hmm. And so the relationship piece, and the investment attraction really doesn't get into sort of guiding me how to get through that type of thing. And so it is, I think it's a bit of both. I don't know if we have a big website that attracts investment to this particular area. I don't know if we're allowed to do that through our community charter on behalf of Hancock Timber, sell their land. But options coming up, with Tree Island Yogurt and their development, essentially they're going to become the developer. And so there's opportunities there, again, supporting that. And as one of the things that the investment strategy says is looking at that investment attraction, both internally within our community. And one of the things we can't lose sight of, if you looked at the demographics in there, the earning potential of the community, and there's a strong appetite. It even says in our strategy about community investment and development. And I really think that is on our strategic plan, the next piece of the strategy that I'm going to start to tackle. And I think there's a real opportunity here that maybe some of this development could be met by local investment. And so I think that part of it is really key for us, and certainly having a strategy to attract outside investment, but doing it in a way that we're not going to get ourselves into trouble. Absolutely.
Councillor Kettler, you wanted to add something else?
Yeah, I did want to mention, supporting and diversifying the businesses that we already have is certainly top of the list. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the CRM and basically, tracking inquiries and, not, as you were saying, it's a struggle to promote something that we don't actually own, but when investors are coming to you and they're saying, this is what we're looking for, to have that data there, to have that file there to say, yep, we have it.
No, absolutely. And maybe, making them know is what you're getting to, making sure they know before they contact me that information is available to them. Absolutely. Because I do have that information, and that's simply kind of how it works. And that's how we see these opportunities at Bevan is now, is as demand comes to them, we have that relationship with Hancock that we can direct them in there, and we can give them the information they need to see what type of opportunity that we're looking at. So I agree, there's probably room to do that in a bit more open way, where people know we can find that information without being told. Absolutely, I agree.
Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thanks for this, Kaylin. It looks great. I especially like the investment attraction process outlined in 3.4 with the steps. And I've been sitting with the latest iced tea grant open on my laptop for like 2 weeks, thinking, how can we use this? How can we use this? And I feel like there might be an opportunity to support your work with that second position, even if it's, I know that the CBA is looking for sort of governance and strategic planning support. I know we need an MOU with them. I know that the Cumberland Culture and Arts Society is interested in doing some of that work. I feel like we have a bunch of nonprofits and possibly businesses who could use some capacity building and support or networking or training or something And maybe that's what that position does, and then helps bring those people to a place where they can move their business forward. And so maybe the combination of these steps and that grant will allow you to focus on sort of the big picture and have somebody out on the ground working with what the small businesses in the community need, and how we get them to a place where they're ready to move out to them.
No, and I agree. No, I've been through that same thought process, right? Both with the CBA and, trying to, we have some great not-for-profits that really are cornerstones, allow us to operate our economy as a community, are really important. One of the challenges, though, is putting them in a position to be more organized than they are right now. And are we applying pressure to them to become more organized? Like, really, if we want strength and partnerships with community organizations, they got to find some sort of maturity level in order for us to for me to be able to adapt. And so that's happening with the CBA right now. So I don't know if, it's ready for us to move it forward from our end. But certainly they could use some level from the ground up on the organization side to, maybe it's a role, or I've sent this same iced tea application to the CBA and said, maybe this is an opportunity here to supplement an executive director to give you some of the bit more legroom to do this type of legroom. And likewise, maybe there's an opportunity to pull some funding together to buy some, or to get into some programming through the Hive Collective or through Scale Collaborative, which are designed to be those incubator and those accelerator programs for not-for-profits. So certainly interested in looking at ways of supporting them, absolutely. And again, this is going to be as well as grant funding. So we probably have funding for one position for a year. So again, as an organization, is this a position we want to create? There's going to be expectations in a year. Do we keep it going and otherwise? And I don't know if we've taken those steps internally to do it. So just some planning to do and some thinking about it. And certainly there's an opportunity there to provide that support to them that way.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kaylin. I would like to say the very good report, very impressed with all the work that you did and addressing all. My one question, my one concern you've already answered, and that was invite international businesses and investors. And I know before COVID started, the government was leaning towards not doing that anymore, that they were looking at local businesses and local projects. And I know through discussions with the Vancouver Island mayors, we were all doing the same thing, looking at what we could provide locally. And so there's a big push on doing that and to get away from the international.
Yeah, thank you, Baron. Typically that type of FDI, as I refer to it, foreign direct investment, seeking that kind of funding is done by larger governments, right? So you're looking at Vancouver and Nanaimo's. Comox Valley as a region might want to have some, but it really depends on what assets you have. And, FDI might be great if we own the industrial lands and we're looking for someone to build them out, but we're the go-between. So it's a matter of playing within what we have available to us.
Yeah, it's like a balancing act, as many of them are.
Yes.
And also the competition out there too for other communities.
Yeah, and for our region, it really is. And, it mentions that in the investment attraction about, as a region, the benefits of cooperating and understanding that any investment we make in our community drives benefit for our entire region, and likewise. And so we really shouldn't be at an ends of competing with each other. We should really be looking at using everything that we have available to us to make the best benefit for all of us. So agreed.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. There is a motion there.
The council supports investment attraction plan and direct staff to incorporate the information and or recommendations within future economic development plans, strategies, and report back to council on their implementation.
Councillor Sproul, second. All in favor? Carried. Next, that council received the appointment of approving officer report.
Percy.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Council. municipalities in BC are required to appoint an approving officer. And generally, the approving officer's role is to approve or reject subdivision applications and plans. And they do that through the use of the municipality's regulatory and policy documents and bylaws. So typically the approving officer is a municipal engineer or chief of planning. And tonight we're recommending that council appoint Courtney Simpson, who is the village's new manager of development services, into this role. And then Rob Crisfield, who is the manager of operations, would remain as the deputy approving officer.
Any questions? Someone like to make the motion?
Sure, I'll move the council appoint Courtney Simpson, approving officer for the village.
Seconder? All in favor? Carried.
Hey, Courtney.
That council receive the information technology upgrades and new fire hall emergency generator report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, Your Worship, before you have, I have a report in relation to some upgrades to our information technology system here. So what put these two reports together in the sense of the generator as well as the IT upgrades, just because the recommendation at this point in time will be to utilize the restart funds at this point in time. And I'll just walk through a little bit about what is proposed here within this. So currently, as council's aware, we have moved to a new IT provider as of February 1st this year. And so part of the implementation process was also do an evaluation on the existing system. Many of the challenges that are before you here, were already noted within our previous service provider. And we basically wanted confirmation that these were what were the priorities to maintain our system. So some of the key priorities that came out of their initial assessment is a server upgrades. So currently our server that we're operating, one of our servers, or two of them, one is a 2003 server and 2008. And one of the things that we are finding that in a number of cases, we're not able to, because of the age of the servers, we're not able to provide updates to those servers any longer. And so there's some concerns about the vulnerability or risk relating to these servers due to the fact that the age of the servers and the fact that some of these updates are no longer available for these servers. So the benefit of where we're going with the server is obviously increased security, more productivity, so that the speed and the use of the servers for staff, and then also more applications and the reliability of those applications will be able to be used. So that is an area that has been noted for us for a period of time, that the servers were required to be updated. And again, we were able to confirm that with the new IT provider. The second piece there is the Microsoft 365 migration. And so what the intent here to do is to move our email, so that with the fact some of our servers, and we do actually, I should have mentioned this, we have 5 servers that we're running on. And so the replacement of the server upgrade is for 2 of those 5. And so the migration of 365 actually moves some of our information or some of our email to a cloud base, so it won't slow down our systems in the sense of server. And that's all meets all requirements relating to Canadian data residency. So we've met all those needs. This information isn't leaving the country. So at present we are, and council, don't smile on this one, but we are utilizing BlackBerry right now for a number of applications. And so BlackBerry certainly has many strengths in the sense of security, but many restrictions in the sense of operations and usefulness. And so this migration to 365 would eliminate the use of BlackBerry, and would allow us to have better access to both emails, but also data. So if council is receiving information, they're able to actually receive it through our server at home, and they'd be able to utilize this system here rather than everything going by email or through a web-based process. So this 365 migration will increase our ability to move that information around and make sure that people that are receiving it, they're able to access it appropriately. And then the other one that is noted here is remote access. So certainly with COVID, we've been relying on more and more need for remote access, but I don't want to speak for council, but I know that it's challenging for council, even in these situations when you're at home, with meetings like this. We right now, our connectivity at home for our servers and email is very limited, and it's limited in a lot of ways. Council did approve us to move towards fiber optic network, so that's in progress, and that will improve. But this remote access improvement will actually take us, rather than right now we have only a certain number of actually licenses. So there's times during the day where there's a certain number of people can't actually be accessing remotely. And that's not only remotely at home, but that could be at a conference or at a meeting down at the CVRD out of the office there. So there are some benefits to this, and this will provide more capacity for that. And then the last one, which was on our work plan there, was to look at council mobile devices. So this would move us away from the paper-based that, I think a lot of organizations are moving away, and allowing council to have a device which is likely to either a small tablet or a workbook that you'd be able to plug in. It would be exactly like any other, Microsoft system there, and you'd be able to bring up emails immediately. You'd be able to look at files, agendas, and all that, and even today be able to follow through all of that, the agendas there with that information in front of you. So that's the IT summary, and many of these things, like I said, had been actually within our work plan. Unfortunately, none of them had actually been funded. But we are certainly at a bit of a critical point. We're realizing that with our new service provider, that certainly there's some areas that we have some risk, and that's why we've put this before council for consideration. And this is exactly what the restart funds were, intended for, is to increase that capacity of the organization and that resiliency of the organization. This is, really, this whole package here is exactly what's intended for that. I don't know, maybe I'll ask if there's any question relating to the IT, and then I can go to the other piece there. Is there any? I'll try my best. I'm not an IT expert. I'm trying to.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan.
I don't have a question. I just have a request. If we are going to be provided with mobile devices, that they have typing capabilities.
Yes. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So we would definitely, the devices that we looked at based on this pricing would be either like a small laptop that would definitely have a keyboard. They'd all have keyboards, guaranteed keyboards. Yeah.
That's it.
Anyone else? No, you're set to go, Clayton.
Okay. And so one of the other pieces, as we're nearing the completion of the fire hall, we have been working at seeing if we could secure one of the pieces that we were hoping to secure some funding for was the fire hall emergency generator. So the generator is, we have the switch within the building. We have all the ductwork, everything's all ready to go, other than the generator, which is obviously a pretty important piece of the puzzle for emergency power. So what the proposal for in front of council is that we would look to be utilizing again these funds for the purchase of a emergency generator, and have that on site, so that we'd be able to have that auxiliary power in the time of need. And as council's aware, the fire department is obviously the main use, but it's also emergency operations center and other emergency response facilities. The other nice thing too is the way that that facility is being built, and the IT. So if we went with these improvements that we talked about with the information technology, this would allow a lot of remote access that we would be able to go down there. Let's just say if there was some sort of long-term power outage or something where we had to have staff down there, we'd be able to mobilize and be down there very quickly and set up and maintain services and business very quickly. The one thing I should have mentioned in both of them, but I just want to mention about the financial piece. So we are recommending in this that the restart fund is used. However, we are nearing the completion of the year end, and through that process, we have looked to be able to confirm or close to confirm that we definitely do have a surplus from 2020, and that was based on a lot of our changes and adjustments that we made to maintain our services there, but also recognizing that revenues were down and things like recreation. So we do in the financial section that you will notice that there is a expected approximately surplus of about $200,000, and so that would be put back into the general accumulated surplus. If council down the road, there's and we did this for the last restart, if they wished at some point in time to utilize this fund for say the generator and use the restart fund for another project, we can certainly adjust that. We just, no matter what, the restart fund, we can only use that for this year. And so that's why we put that proposal or that recommendation forward for this. But it's certainly like we did with, I think it was the earlier, prior to receiving the restart, we moved some of those expenses that were not associated with the restart fund. We moved them and paid for those through the restart fund. So there is flexibility. As we finalize that year end, we can report back to council what that surplus looks like, and we can utilize that as well for, could be the generator or other future projects. So I think in fairly strong financial position there. So.
Questions on this part, Councillor Brown?
I was following you so well, and then that last little bit confused me. So so you're suggesting that we use the financial stabilization reserve for this 223,000 or the COVID fund?
Yeah,
You're
sorry.
suggesting the COVID funds.
Yeah,
okay.
so just based on the fact that this fund we need to use for this year, where I guess what in speaking with the Director of Finance there, we have that ability down the road if we want to utilize that surplus, we could move any of these costs out. And if there are projects that are more suitable for the COVID funds, we could utilize that for another project and vice versa. So sorry for making that complicated, but these projects are would be utilizing the restart funds at this time. That's the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Sullivan, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why, if the switch and the conduit is installed, why the cost of the generator wasn't embedded in the original budget.
Yeah, it's a good question. It was not part of the original plan. I think there was a belief that there was potential grants that were available at that point in time. And certainly I know staff have been looking at various options relating to this. The other thing at that point in time too, we weren't really sure, as we started construction, we weren't really sure the size of the generator, because there are different ways that the generator could be scoped out. Was it going to be the whole building, a portion of the building? This does allow the whole building to be powered, and some facilities do not power they don't have a generator that powers the whole building. We have one here at the hall here that only powers a certain portion of it. But the plan here would be the whole building, and I don't know if that was decided on the early part of the project there. So yeah.
And if I could, with a follow-up, when is the opening, and are we on budget?
Two good questions. So we actually had a site meeting today. We're just in the final stages of a number of, the fire hall is an interesting one, because certainly in any other case, we probably would move in, but there's communications that we need to make sure that are transferred over. There's a couple of relation to some air compressors that need to be in place over there that we're actually doing the work, because we're taking our air compressor from the existing fire hall over to the other fire hall. So there's some work right now in the very back end that the village is actually doing as part of the move over. So we did have a meeting today and we were finalizing that. I don't have an exact date on that. I'd say we're very close within the next couple of weeks that we would be able to at least have the trucks over there. I'm not sure that it would be fully operational at the time, but they'd be able to respond to calls and do that in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But there is a couple of things that we're working on. There's a phone system that we're just wanting to make sure that it's working properly, obviously for responding to any 911. The communication, so there's the pole has been put up the back and powered, but we have to actually get our communication towers in place there. So there's a few things that from the village's perspective are that we're working on. And in relation to budget, as of the end of February, we were on budget. I won't say that we have contingency or anything left. We have definitely utilized every penny to make this thing work. So I'm confident that we're going to finish in here on budget, but it's close. I'll just say that we just got the final February numbers there, and there's a few obviously for March that will come in, but for the most part we're right there. It's certainly there's been I think they've done a really good job of on a lot of areas, but there's also some unforeseen areas that we came up, especially early in the sense of some additional rock removal. I think we reported back to council many months ago, probably back in April last year, a year ago. And but other than that, yeah, it seems to be that we're there, and we're excited to get over there. I know the fire department would like to see it happen as soon as possible. We will also be arranging a like an opening in some sort of COVID friendly opening, but we'll be doing that as well in the coming days. We'll figure out the details. Staff are just looking at what that might look like. It might be a video tour. It might be like council coming down. We don't know exactly, but we're looking at some different options there.
I do know that there's some waiting in the vault to be utilized there.
I'm aware of this. We'll definitely bring the scissors out.
Thanks, Clayton.
Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, thanks for the update, Clayton. Just in regard to the generator, is it going to require additional external fuel storage on site? You know?
Well, the fuel would be part of the actual generator, very similar to the one that we have at the water treatment plant, and we have one at the wastewater treatment plant. So it's exactly the fuel, the actual system is built in there. And I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure there is, if the question is in relation to what that looks like, there is a they do have backup reservoirs in there. So if there is a failure in there, they do actually have holding tanks there for that, but it would be built into the actual generator. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. My question was answered when Councillor Sullivan asked you about the contingency.
Yeah.
Next, there's a recommendation there.
The council approved $223,500 for the information technology and fire hall generator expenditures to be funded through the general financial state. Am I reading it right?
Yes.
Yeah. General finance. I thought yes, stabilization reserve and COVID-19 restart funds, and direct staff to amend the adopted 2021 to 2026 financial plan bylaw to reflect this expenditure.
Seconder. Councillor Spruill, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Clayton. Council members' monthly reports. Councillor Spruill. Thank you.
Yeah. A lot of the month has been taken up with history and heritage. The Heritage Committee has been focusing on the King George and the statement of significance. And we even got an opportunity, the committee, to go around the King George and inside. And it really has a lot of potential. It's quite different from what you would imagine. And could be anything, but there is talk of hotels or whatever, but it has the promise of a real good heritage type hotel. Coldest night of the year. It was fun being with our team, Team Cumberland, on a beautiful sunny afternoon. The LGLA Zoom conference, I don't have my notes there at home, unfortunately, but it was way more fun than I thought it would be. I thought, how can a conference be rewarding? But there was such good presentations, and there was a lot of old friends from local government, and people are chatting in the sidebars, and altogether it was definitely a worthwhile project. Oh, the survey monument in Village Park. This is what I've been spending time on. Let me just, I have a few notes here. Not everybody will know Rocky. So Robert, yeah, a surveyor. I know Leslie does for sure. And he just passed away earlier this year. And I had a whole pile of questions to ask him about various things, like where that monument was, because I couldn't find. 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, he showed it to me, and with urgency in his voice said, "You've got to keep it." Now you could say, what is it? Rocky had been a surveyor all his life, and a good chunk of time surveying in the Cumberland mines. And when he was growing up here as a kid, he and his buddies knew where to find boreholes. These are the holes that are put into the ground to see if there's any coal there. But many of them were pushing out methane gas. And so he and his friends used to just throw lights in these places. So he knew that there was a lot of danger. There's the black hole, this is the one that's nearest to Cumberland, but there are 130 in this area, and people could fall into them, or they could set on fire, or they could collapse. And so in his retirement years, he decided to map them all, come up with coordinates for all of the boreholes, and then send it to the government so that people like our municipalities would have all that information for the future. So the way he did it was going to those big maps downstairs in the museum, this big war maps, and so what he wished to keep is a 00 monument. It's a survey point that all the surveying was done by in around Cumberland. And yeah, so it doesn't like much, but Cumberland mines and galleries and boreholes, they were all coordinated and put on a map. And he's gone now, the 00 monument where all the measuring started from, to be preserved for the future, because those maps in the museum make no sense. There's no record of the galleries and the mines without the 00 monument. So it was 2 or 3 years ago when we've been doing projects together for a long time, but he insisted on showing me it. I showed it to Kevin McFedrin. It was day one of work for him. I thought he should know, because it has to be kept into posterity. So it's just on a piece of rough ground near the jump park. It's not in a very auspicious place. Right now it's got orange ribbons leading to the spot, some tussocky grass. And if you didn't dig down a bit, you'd never see it. It's only about this big, concrete, put there in 1911. So I didn't know how to find some of the answers after Rocky passed away, but on Old Cumberland, I met his son, and he was the one who told me where it was and gave me a lot of information. Anyway, it's really close to the railway track at the back of the village park. And I feel that we need to get that monument marked and some kind of marker in it and located. But it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't even have to be large. I'm just not sure. The son of Rocky wanted a marble column. I said, that won't last long. It has to be something that's very durable. But it is the essence of the siting of everything to do with the coal mines in Cumberland. So I hope I've emphasized. I'm not sure what we're going to do. I mean, I'm just working on it on my own. What kind of monument? And does it require much funding? I think not. So, ideas.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Questions?
Councillor Brown?
That's fantastic, Gwen. Thank you for following through on that. I'd love to see, even if we just did a signpost or something that recognized that spot. It doesn't have to be fancy, but I just didn't know any of that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I also had no idea about anything like that, and I'd be absolutely supportive moving forward of sort of monument. Sure.
I think it would be very interesting for people to come.
Yeah. The sign, as Councillor Brown said, something, and you'd probably trying to describe what exactly that point really means.
What it means.
Actually.
Yeah, how it ties in. Right, I'll work on that some more.
Yeah, I think you need to talk to staff a little bit and get some ideas from them. They might have a good idea on what we could do.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So my report's there, I won't go through it, but I did want to mention a couple of things that came up in my, I took to Facebook. And so I apologize for any negative fallout that anyone may have experienced from that. It was generally positive, got a little bit dark at the end, but two really great things came out of it. One was the suggestion, so someone who has created an accessory dwelling unit on her property and rents it affordably, as yet to be determined what that affordability number is, and said, you know, since I've done that, my service, I pay double services and I pay more property tax and all this, and couldn't people who are doing that get some kind of tax break? And I thought, that sounds reasonable. And so I'm hoping to bring that forward somehow to send to the Affordability Committee, find some way of presenting that to them so they can have a look at it. Because I think that would be a way of taking all these ADUs and ensuring that we would need willing partners, but people who are willing to rent it for a certain amount of money that we determined is reasonable, and then they're long-term rentals. And so that's providing affordable rentals by our own community, and we don't have to wait for anyone else to do that. So I just thought that was a great idea, and so hopefully we can move that forward. And then the other thing that came up that I thought was a really great idea, because I've noticed the CVRD doing it with the dump. You know, Tina did that great video and educated people about a whole bunch of stuff. But having like a did you know thing, I know we put lots of announcements and stuff in Currently Cumberland, but having like a did you know that, I don't know, the service you pay for water includes yada, 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 or maybe wanted to start with something a little more, you know, interesting. But there were a lot of things came up in the thread that people just had no idea, that either totally didn't have anything to do with us, or they just didn't understand how it worked or whatever. So, and that was one of the suggestions that someone had, was to, hey, why don't you do a monthly did you know feature in Currently Cumberland? So that's all I'll share.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No? Okay, Councillor Sullivan. Oh, do you want a question?
Just like to reiterate my support for that concept. I had a chat with Councillor Brown this morning or this afternoon about that topic. And that really seems like a really interesting concept to move forward and just see if that could actually work. I mean, it would have to go on title, I suppose, if someone were to sell their house, that the rent would stay the same, but I guess that would be part of the tax break written in. But I think there's room to work on that, or I'd like to see that fleshed out a bit.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Sullivan, oh, Councillor Sproul, you have a question?
Yes, sorry, here we are. That's the wrong way, right?
Yeah, you're on now.
Right, wrong way, yes. I'm very good report, by the way, Councillor Brown. It's one of other stuff. I'm curious to know though, about the monthly meetings with the CAO. And they all look such interesting topics, like every one of them would appeal to me. I was wondering if there was any way we could discuss those in a regular council meeting, either have an extra meeting a month. There seems to be an appetite to discuss more things like roads. It was quite a wide variety of things. I'm not sure what Councillor Cathra discusses, but I think we could discuss them at a regular council meeting, and then the CAO, I mean, if we all, I'm not sure if I would want a monthly council meeting, but the CAO potentially has 5 individual meetings. Anyway, I wonder if we could have more of a recording of what the conversations are, just to keep us in the loop, because I don't know at all. And I feel a bit left out. So I don't know what to do about that.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Respond? Yeah, that's why I put it in there, Councillor Sproul, because I'm happy to discuss anything that I've discussed with Clayton. And I do find that since COVID, we're all in our houses and we used to get 15 or 20 minutes before a council meeting, catch up and talk about all these things, and we just don't get that now, and we don't get our conference time together, and we don't get any social time together, and so there's it's challenging, I think, for all of us.
I was going to say, so how could we be more sharing and getting this in? I don't know what to do.
And I think that's part of the problem is with COVID, and we've been isolated, and we haven't been when we get together, the conversation seems to go on and on and on from one thing to the next. So we're trying to make up for all the time that we haven't been able to get together, and it's like having a conversation with one, and then you've got to go and have a conversation with another one, and it can get very time consuming to have all these conversations on the same subject. And so what we need to do is, I know once COVID is over, it will be totally different, and we'll be able to have that rapport again that we haven't been able to have on Zoom. Councillor Sullivan.
Further to that, pardon me, just to let council know, I usually stop in to talk with our CAO, once a week. I don't really feel it's as officious enough to put it on the report, but if there was anything as important enough, I would. It's true that we're missing these small social times before the meetings. So I just wanted to say I stop in, and I would suggest that we all stop in and talk to our CAO and just sort of keep those things going. Yeah, that's about it. I just, especially because we're missing those times, I definitely try to go in and sort of just catch myself up on what's happening. So yeah, that's
and I couldn't report on all the conversations I have with the CAO. I talk to him every single day. And even when he's not here, he's working from home, I still talk to him. And some of just like talking today about the hydro. Our main street was shut down on Sunday because hydro was busy working, and I heard a number of rumors of what was actually being done, and today I found out those rumors are not true. That's not what they were doing at all. Anyway, those are the types of things that I talk about with the CAO. Some of it I relay to council, but not all of it.
Well, I just want a way to be able to be connected without, I always thought I shouldn't bother the CAO. That's sort of what I've gotten from the past. We've not typically gone to see the CAO. So I don't know whether I should just put my name down and have a chin wag.
Well, it might help you to understand what the rest are going through and what they're doing, and it will give you the opportunity to ask him questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. So yeah, just a couple board meetings. There's a strategic priorities happening for the hospital board, which I've mentioned previously. And okay, first of all, before I get into that, I'll just say on the 11th, I did stop into Clear Flow Solutions. Hopefully, everybody in the community has seen Clear Flow. It's a gentleman, Kevin Houghton in Courtney, who has created a technology that creates clean water. So I was able to facilitate our MP, Gord Johns, meeting him just to hopefully further the system along. And basically what it does is in a 10 by 10 C-can, it can produce 37 gallons a minute of clean water for about $20 a day. So if anybody's curious, I would suggest they look up Clear Flow Solutions and check it out. There was some news about it on Check. And so, yeah, so that was really nice to just see that system and be able to participate in the presentation and check it out. It's he really wants to go into the First Nations first, and that's his that's what he's trying to do. So I'm really hoping that that works out. So now the council or the hospital board stuff. So the strategic priorities, there was an interviews section with different parts of the community. So they separated the telephone interviews as per region. So I thought that made more sense. So I was on with a couple of the members from Comox. It was very interesting. I guess I'll try to keep this brief. Says it's 50 to 70% of the board was interested. The mandate for the hospital board is basically to provide brick and mortar buildings and to partner with Island Health to create like brick and mortar buildings, like the hospitals were built with the hospital board. But the mandate is maybe wanting to be expanded by the board. And so that's what the strategic priorities are trying to find out. Some of the older guard on the board are not really willing to change that. So there's a little bit of butting heads moving forward, but some new information will be coming forward, which I'll provide at the next meeting. So it's a really interesting time at the hospital board. There's some options coming up, as you see further down the report. One of their solutions was maybe using the reserves to create more of integrated community health building that would maybe take off some of the necessity for the emergency room having to deal with certain cases and stuff like that. So it's really high level right now, just what I'm writing down with the building space. A lot of the board thinks that this is getting downloaded from the province to the community to deal with these things, which a lot of people think that that's what's happening. But the more information that we receive, I feel like there's maybe a middle ground with that. So moving forward with the strategic priorities, I'll report back on what the next steps are happening. So then the borrowing for the hospitals is going to end in 2028. So there's $11 million in 2028 coming off. So the board's in really good shape. There's a lot of money. So hopefully that people will see that there's other options and other ways for the board to help the community rather than just providing buildings, but we'll remain to be seen. And on the bottom there, I have to correct something. It says Island Health is completing a business plan for the development of a 150-bed long-term care facility, and it didn't make it on the bottom, in Campbell River. It should say that at the end. So,
that's a really important part.
it afterwards, and I was hoping anyway. Unfortunately, it's not in the valley, but it certainly will relieve some portions of that in the valley. So some really interesting times at the hospital board. There's some changes happening, and change and growth is very difficult, as everybody is well aware in our communities. So yeah, hopefully we'll find some of the best practices and best solutions coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No, thank you very much, Councillor Sullivan. Well done. Councillor Kettler.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I have my reports there. It's another busy month. Many of the same things that the other councillors were doing. LGLA and the coldest night of the year, which Cumberland did really well. I just want to give a shout out to Cumberland school teacher Krista Petch and her students, and for all the money that they raised for that cause. And Team Cumberland, which our council was a part of, did very well for raising funds as well. So that was really nice to see. So from the board, we're doing the financial plan right now. So there's a 25% increase to the emergency program service. Also, I just wanted to note that our homelessness support service is contributing $100,000 to the Cumberland affordable housing project, the Tall Tree, the 22 units that are going up on 2nd Street. So we are seeing returns on our contributions to that service. Yeah, lots of meetings with CVRD. I also wanted to say what a pleasure it's been to work with the Cumberland students, Lister and Ben. Had multiple meetings with them now, working on the Green New Deal and the resolutions. And yeah, it's really nice. They're very intelligent and eager young men that are doing really, really well for their community right now. So I just wanted to give them their props. Let's see what else. We've met with a fairly new group, the Comox Valley Emergency Operations Center Policy Group. And so we're discussing COVID updates mostly, and there's talk about vaccine rollout, which you probably are all aware and are seeing now in the community. Yeah, I think that's about it. Regular meetings with the KFN, where we do our monthly updates from the CVRD, and also regular monthly meetings with the Island Coastal Economic Trust. And I'm open to any questions if you have any.
Doesn't look like it. And my report tonight is going to be verbal, and I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter. I too attended a lot of things that I'm not going to report on, but there is a number of things that I'm going to talk to you about, and that's the meetings. We've had 3 meetings with Ben and Lister on a new Green Deal, and they've been exceptionally good meetings. They are open to discussion and changes, and it's been an amazing experience, I think, for them and for us. And one of the things that came up under the discussion was the transportation, and this reminded me of a project that I had been working on before COVID hit, and that was on the school bus, the bike school bus. And I'd actually got to the point where we were really looking at starting the funding of this. They were going to cost about $25,000 to purchase, and they're a 10-person bike for students. And I had talked to the CCSS, and they were willing to work with us, and they got excited about using the bike from Monday to Friday for picking up students and taking them to school. And Recreation was also excited about the fact that they would use it when school was not in for programs. So it would be the 2 of them working together. I think I reported this to council way back. And then during the discussion, I talked about what a great way to promote this some more. So I phoned Clean BC. And under their active transportation strategy, they have funding that's available. but it was $1,700, which won't pay $25,000 for one of the bikes. So I asked him if he'd be interested in doing a pilot project on these bikes for British Columbia. And they have heard, this is the email that came back. We have heard your interest and will put this for consideration into future enhancements for the active school travel program and MBA pilot program. So he wanted to talk to it in great deal. And one of the things that did happen was Gord Johns, the RMP, put me in contact with the bike guru from the Netherlands. And we were actually getting to the point of getting a shipment over from the Netherlands, including one of these bikes. And with COVID, that hit and it just put everything to a stop. So we have the contacts, and they got really excited because of the fact this is something that almost every community in BC could be doing with their schools. And it's easy enough to do. The Beaufort Cycles said that they would provide the space to store it. There was somebody in the village that was willing to drive the bike and pick the kids up. So it was all going to come together, and hopefully this will start to get it going again. And I'm sure this could be taken to the active school transportation program that's up and running now. Maybe they'd like to take it and run with it. But it would certainly be nice if they could put it in a pilot project, because I thought, well, if they would pay for the whole bike, that would be fantastic. The first one in BC. You never know unless you ask. I did attend a meeting with Minister Osborne and Minister Sheila Malcolmson with a teleconference on the mental health for BC. It was a really good discussion, and she made quite an impression on everybody on what she was recommending and what they're doing and what they're working on. And after that, I had a follow-up conversation with Minister Osborne, and we further talked about the requirements for mental health in the village. And we will be discussing it when we go have our meeting with her on the 19th further. She was going to try and see if she could get some things going here for us. I attended a Healthy Communities Equity and Economic Recovery Plan program with Emily Johnson, who is a community planner, and Libby Raphael, project manager, and it was about economic development and economic reconciliation. It was really worth attending. A lot of these, they're online and they're Zoom, and you could just go in and watch them and listen to them, and you get a lot of information. I think most of us get them. We're inundated with them. We could spend every day, all day, going on these little clips. I had a telephone conversation with Anthony Everett, Vancouver Island Tourism. He's the CAO. And we had a very good discussion about what's happening in the Comox Valley with Vancouver Island Tourism. And he asked me to go down to this info center and have a look through and see if I had noticed any changes or wanted any changes on behalf of Cumberland on the info center. And I was actually quite surprised that a lot of the things already reflect Cumberland, and a lot of their signs and a lot of the information they have. I will say that none of it's changed since the day they opened. It's still the same. Yeah, it's still the same. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that and how it works out. I also attended the Municipal World podcast. This is another one that came. Psychological safety in the municipal workplace. And it talks about staff and the stresses that they are going through right now and how hard it is to make good decisions when you're under stress. So I found that very interesting. And I actually shared that with our CAO. I was interviewed for the statement of significance for the King George Hotel. Had a very pleasant discussion and actually handed it off to another lady to talk further about what we saw and what was important to us as the King George, whether it was actually the King George or the fact of how supportive they were with the community and the events and all the things that they did to support the community as a business. And when you sit down and start talking about it, and you have your memories of everything that happened. And she asked me at the end if it was important, the building was important, or the social aspect of it. And I think pretty close to the same. They're both very, very important. Answered many emails on air quality. I'm sure you've all seen the emails on wood stoves and what's going on with them. Answered many emails on Bill C-21, the gun control bylaw, control laws, and what the federal government is wanting to do with those. I did send an email off to council from Gord Johns about what is happening in that way. They're looking at giving municipalities more authority in the controlling of guns. It's actually quite scary. Had a number of calls about the hydro and street lighting. And I am actually checking with Victoria. I phoned Victoria because I heard on the news hour that they are providing shields for residents for the telephone poles or street light poles that are close to their properties. So I haven't heard back, but I will let you know when I do. And many emails concern development concerns from residents and builders. And so, yeah, they just keep coming in. Hopefully, everybody seems to be happy with what I tell them. The last two items are COVID. I would like to ask all residents to be patient. People will be vaccinated within the next couple of months. Please stay the course until everyone that wants to be vaccinated is. We are not over this yet. We are asking that all residents phone the number 1-833-348-4787 only when it's your time, it's your turn. And the call center is open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. At this time, the clinic will be at 19 Wing in Comox, and they are making every effort to come to each community. They sent out a release today, and they've added Comox Valley. They put Comox Valley Hospital, Ambulance Bay as one place, and Comox Valley Health Unit on England Avenue is another clinic. So I'm hoping to hear that they will be coming to Cumberland. And also on Facebook today, there was an announcement about the ambulance service in Cumberland. And I have set up a meeting with Minister Osborne this week to talk about it. The official announcement will be coming in the next 2 to 3 days. So it has not been made official yet. And so we're just gathering information for the discussion. And that's my report. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up about the hydro, the lights, the letter from the resident near Maryport. Is there anything we can do about that besides is there a way for us to say no thanks to the LEDs? I know we asked for the lowest wattage, but it seems to be just still way, way too bright.
Yes,
So,
yeah, I emailed her and told her that I had gone by to see it, and it is bright, absolutely. And that's when I phoned Victoria to find out about the shields. And it just now announced that Victoria was paying for the shields, but I want to know how much they are. I also want to know who installs them and what essentially they do before we do that. So I'm waiting for Victoria to phone back to me. If you ever phone the city of Victoria, be prepared. 15-minute wait to talk to a person. It was, yeah, I'm sure they'll get back to me. But yes, there's going to be a lot of concern about the lights if they're that bright. And I've had a conversation with a councillor from Lantsville that had concerns also.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's affecting most municipalities.
So I wonder if there's something we should be doing publicly about it.
Yeah, other than say that it did come to council and we did make our decisions. Yeah. And so we weren't given the option of opting out of it. We were
Yeah.
told we had our choice, one way, one or the other. Councillor Sullivan?
I'd just like to add my 2 cents. I'm not sure where the letter came from on Maryport, but I have a light. I live on Maryport, and there's a light that's been replaced. And when we said yes to this, there was talk in the report about it being directional,
Yeah.
and those are not directional. It's like a headlight staring at you from 100 feet or 60 feet up. It's specific. I don't know if it's just the one. The only new one I've seen is one basically near in front of my house, and just driving to my house, it's extremely distracting and a million times brighter, and not in any way directional to the ground. It's just still really bright. So I feel we were a little bit duped on that report because there's no directionality at all. And frankly, I mean, I don't know what the covers are going to look like. They might provide the directionality that they originally said that they were giving to us, but it's terrible. Yeah, the lights. I'm glad this is coming up because we have to figure that out because it's actually really distracting when you're driving.
I know we got an email from Hydro saying that they're doing ours on March the 11th. And they're shutting down the hydro from, I think it's 9 till 3. So I'm not sure what that all entails for them to be out that long. And am I the only one on the block that got that? So I'm going to do a little bit more investigation as to what's exactly they're doing.
Oh, we have 3 days to stop this.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to stop it. No.
Oh, well,
But we also can't afford to pay for the shields and install them.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I want to look and find out what they are and how much they are.
And it's against our OCP, which specifically states we look for dark skies.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I feel a letter writing campaign coming on.
a lot of light pollution coming from those bad boys.
Yeah.
It's like stark white, and I don't think orange really loud ballasts, but I would prefer those to what's being replaced.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So anyway, that's where it stands right now. I will, we would be talking about this further, I'm sure. So can I have a recommendation to accept reports, to receive reports?
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, we have bylaws. Water Service Frontage Tax Amendment Bylaw. And the first one is adopt.
I'll move that council adopt the water service frontage tax amendment bylaw number 1144, 2021.
Second.
All in favor? The next one, 7.2.
Move that council adopt the sewer service frontage tax amendment bylaw number 1145, 2021.
Second, Councillor Spruill. All in favor? Carried. Next, 7.3.
I'll move this council adopt the stormwater frontage tax amendment bylaw 1146, 2021.
Second.
Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. Next, 7.4.
I'll move that council adopt water supply capital improvements parcel tax bylaw number 1147, 2021.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, the council received the third reading and adoption zoning amendment bylaw number 1133, 2020 report dated March 3rd, 2021.
Receipt.
Second.
In favor? Carried. Yes, Karen.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's great to be here and winding down your long meeting with the zoning bylaw update. Adoption. What could be better? So I just have a very brief report to go with this. You've seen this a few times. We held a public hearing on the zoning amendment bylaw number 1133 on March 2nd. Just last Tuesday evening. 15 submissions were received at that public meeting and leading up to that public meeting. staff is recommending a few further amendments to the zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw, to take into account some of those submissions that were received. And largely what we included in the amendment and the further amendments to the amendment bylaw are housekeeping items. So they're not big substantial items at this point, where we're bringing the bylaw forward to third reading. So you can see in the recommendations, one is really just also a housekeeping item, including breezeway into lot coverage as part of the lot coverage definition in the zoning bylaw. And just also a little bit more on breezeways, changing the wording around. So it's not the breezeway that's the problem. But what we don't want to see is an accessory dwelling unit being connected to the main dwelling, and then by virtue of that connection through breezeway become part of that main dwelling unit, have access to higher height restrictions and that. So we changed the wording around a bit to just make it clear they can be connected, but it doesn't mean they're not two separate buildings anymore for the purpose of our zoning bylaw. Then a cute little error crept in, which one of the submissions noticed. We're restricting honeybees to the top of a rooftop in the VCMU1 zone, and that should really say hives. Bees will go where they want. So that was a really welcome comment. So those are the comments that the changes that we are proposing to add to this round of the zoning bylaw update. A few other submissions were also made, which are a bit more substantial. We have a few other processes in place coming up where we can explore those a bit more and address them further. And one that was related to an accessory dwelling units permit in the front yard. In one of the larger lots, we recently had a discussion around that where council did not want to change the requirement that accessory dwellings units cannot be in the front yard, meaning people have to apply for variance, and that can still be granted at that time nonetheless. There were some submissions for and against parking, the increase in the parking cash in lieu amount. And we do have a report came to you before with the last bylaw, when this bylaw came for second reading, where we asked for a recommendation, which to bring this forward to the committees to look at further ways to regulate parking, so that some of the things that the village wishes to see more of, such as affordable housing, heritage protection, the downtown core, can possibly receive exemptions or reductions in the parking cash in lieu amount. And that may also include some commercial uses, especially commercial use in existing heritage buildings. So that discussion is happening. Those are really the key things I wanted to point out. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Someone want to go first? Very quiet. Councillor Kettler, you got your hand up first.
Just maybe talking a bit about the ADUs in the front yard and some of the reasoning that came up before when we discussed this in council was that with infill, we're also aware of character of neighborhood and trying not to negatively affect that too much. It's not that that ADUs won't be able to, as you said, Karen, you could still apply for a variance to put an ADU in the front yard. It's just that we wouldn't want to, or this was the discussion before, just say a blanket okay for ADUs in the front yard, because it really is lot specific as to whether those things would fit or not. So the safer bet was to go with requesting people who wanted to do the front yard ADU to go through the variance process.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
I think we've all had some time to think about the parking question, and so I would like to revisit that if you all will indulge me. The parking, I feel like we heard from both sides, and the general gist was that parking is or is not a problem. But right now, we're not addressing the current problem. We're addressing the future problem that's coming with future development. So right now we've approved 32, a minimum of 32 units to not have an associated parking lot off-site, off the street. And we may have collected enough money from our cash in lieu to provide that parking on side streets or by angled parking. If we do angled parking on our main street, we will lose our sidewalk cafes and our bike lanes. So I have concerns about that. And I also just am opposed to accepting cash in lieu because it puts that responsibility of providing parking in the hands of council and our taxpayers. And I know that the rest of council and myself feel like developers should be the ones paying for parking associated with their developments. And we know that given the market housing market we are currently in, that those developers stand to potentially make a lot of money, and they should be responsible for the costs that come along with that. And I think we're all in agreement with that. I think we just have different methods of looking at it. I don't want future taxpayers or future councils to have to be responsible for finding a place to park a bunch of cars, because as it stands now, we live in a place where we are car dependent, and our parking requirements are actually quite reasonable and progressive to start with. So I know in Courtney, for a residential unit, they require 1.5 parking spots, if I read the bylaw properly, per unit. We only require 1. And like I said before, we've allowed 32 already to come. So now, say another new apartment comes and they decide, because they have an extra large lot, that they're going to do 30 buildings, even with the restriction of 30%, that's 10 new, at a minimum, 10 cars that have nowhere to go associated with that development. And they don't even have to ask us. They can just opt to pay us that money, and then that parking becomes our responsibility or our taxpayers' responsibility. So I would encourage us all, and I would like to make a motion to waive cash in lieu for residential developments in the downtown core. One more time.
Okay, I would like to hear from the rest of council before we move that one on forward. Okay, so we'll give everybody an opportunity. Okay, Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, and I understand, not wanting to put parking costs back onto the community. Absolutely. I agree that should be borne by the developer. It's just how do we go about that? If you're saying waive cash in lieu, then you're saying then they have to provide it on site, but we don't know that that's even possible for future developments. So we don't really understand the repercussions of that. I think that's my concern, is would that prevent development from happening then? Is underground parking even possible in our downtown core? I don't know. So that's part of my concern about just cutting it out without that information at hand. I think there's a lot of things that we could do with the money that we're using to increase. And I think, one of the suggestions I would have would be to develop multimodal infrastructure. So not just have that money go to parking and development of parking, but to develop bike lanes and other forms of multimodal infrastructure so that we can move away from our car-centric culture that we're currently have. Another thing I would like to see is directional signage, because we do have 3 major parking lots already in Cumberland. We have our CRI, we have the Cultural Center, and we have Village Park. So there is actually a lot of parking already. It's just not being utilized. And I think it's normal for communities, municipalities to have centralized parking. You park somewhere and then you walk downtown, and that's a normal process. We just need to use the money that we're collecting for parking in lieu to develop those sites that we already have and to direct people to them. So that's some of the things I would like to see, and hopefully those are discussions that we'll be having in the future, as Karen was saying earlier.
Yeah. Councillor Sproul?
Yes, I actually agree entirely with Councillor Kettler. I do believe we have quite a bit of parking around in the village, but it is underutilized. Like, I couldn't say, and I don't know if we've done a study, how many parking spots could be created by behind the cultural center if it was all had a good surface and was divided up. Then the angle parking, I know that there's some at least near the museum, there's possibly more. I don't know, have we done a study on parking spots, parking in Cumberland?
Nope.
Because we don't know really what our capacity is, but it's true we have the CRI parking lot, we have the one behind the museum, and there could be angle parking. And I think we have to take cash in lieu. If we want to do something in the way of improving the parking, we need funds to do that. So I'm not in favor of waiving cash in lieu. That's the statement.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, appreciate Councillor Brown's comments. I've obviously spent a lot of time, just like everyone else, thinking about this and taking in all of the suggestions by everyone. After talking to staff and several different professionals, I'm supporting parking moving forward at this point. But that said, we all don't know what the answer is. The growth in this village is happening exponentially, as we all know. I'm going to reiterate saying that I really, really think we need our parking study done yesterday. We've been asking for it for years. So if council needs to put that at the top of our strategic priority to make sure that we can make these informed decisions with this study, with the help of a study like that, that's what I'd like to suggest. But moving forward, I will support the new bylaw.
Pardon, I didn't get the last part.
Just moving forward, I'll support the bylaw.
Okay. I have a question for staff, and it is, I would like to see the parking study done before we make any decisions on this. I think we need some experts here to tell us what we should be doing. And I really don't feel, I've listened to the pros and I've listened to the cons, and I'm really torn between all of it. And I think it's causing some problems. And I don't like what's happening here. And I would really like some expert advice on parking. And I think we need to finish that study before we move forward on what we're doing here. And so Clayton, I see you've highlighted the room. Is there something that you would like to say?
Well, just to let council know, so as council's aware, so our RFP for our facilities and properties review will be going out later this week. That does have a component relating to parking and some concepts. It certainly is not going to answer the questions specifically relating to the development side of things. It's more about looking at what available options are there and what the best our existing parking is. And I'll give examples of this. Part of we'll be coming back to council next meeting with a list of are working on a list of the options for the remaining COVID restart funds. So these are things that council can select. There's no timelines with any of these, but one of them does relate to signage, and parking signage and directional signage. And that's a small one, but staff identified that as one that we believe that would make a difference. So that'll be coming to council at the next meeting. But I guess I just wanted to, the question relating to what I believe is being discussed here will likely not be completely answered in the parking study that or the parking component of the study that we're doing. Like it is more just about where all the spaces are, where that options are. It's not about how we deal with development and future. It's really about how do we make the best use of the properties and facilities. So if council wishes to look at it a different way, we can certainly explore that. It's just right now the study, the way it's designed is to basically look at all the properties, look at the best use of the properties, look at the options like the Telus lot down by the Legion, look at should it be, Council Spruill had mentioned, and this has been brought up, what is the capacity we get at the cultural center? Maybe there's 100 spaces there if it was properly laid out. So there's definitely a lot of answers that will come out of this, but it may not be, I just want to be clear, I'm a little concerned it may not answer all the questions relating to this particular item. So I just wanted to be advise council on that.
Okay, Councillor Spruill.
Yes, thank you, Clayton. Yeah, I think that if we had a parking study of the kind rough and ready that Clayton's talking about, I think it would inform us as to some of the ability for the village to provide parking. I'm not saying it will take up it will fit all the parking that's needed, but I think it will go a long way to giving us some idea of what needs to be done. I'd be quite satisfied with that report.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, so thank you, Clayton, for that clarity. I think the parking study will go a long way to explaining what kind of parking capacity we have in the village for commercial use and for recreational use. That's where those parking lots will be will be in play. They're going to be used by bikers and people accessing the trails, or people doing other things in town. The question I have, or the concern I have, is about parking for people who live in the downtown core, who need a spot for their car all day and potentially all night, should they choose to work from home. That's my concern. So we might have lots of parking right now for commercial, and it's no problem. But when we move in a bunch of people to live in the downtown core and they don't have anywhere to put their cars, that's when there's a problem. So we know we're a place that is highly sought after, and we won't know if people can do underground parking until we ask them to. And at that point, we'll find out. And if they can't, then we'll deal with it at that time. But I don't think, anyway, so yeah, I think this is a different conversation. That the need we have right now, the problem that cash in lieu brings is making us responsible for providing parking for people who live there, their cars are there all the time. They're not coming and going. They're parked on that street all day and all night. And if someone wants to come and shop at the business they're parked in front of, they don't have any access, and we have no control over that. And if we move them off the main street with timed parking or some other parking facility, then we're putting them into somebody else's neighborhood. And that developer didn't pay for that.
So members of council, what is your pleasure? Councillor Spruill?
Right, I will recommend that council amend, we have to do the amend first, right? Zoning amendment bylaw number 1133 to 2025, inserting breezeway following carports in the definition of lot coverage in section 2B, striking number 5, accessory building, including accessory dwelling units, cannot be joined to the building that houses the principal use by a breezeway in section 6, and substituting number 5, being connected to a building that houses the principal use by a breezeway does not make an accessory building part of that principal building or structure, and striking honeybees and substituting hives in section 15 following 1, and striking 4, honeybees shall be housed. Oh dear, sorry. Sorry about this. Where is that? Sorry, I have it right here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, and substituting hives and striking for honeybees shall be housed in hives and renumbering the sections that follow accordingly. That council give third reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 1133/2020 as amended. That council adopt zoning bylaw number 1133/2020.
Seconder,
Second.
any further discussion? See none?
Can I just say one more thing? I really appreciate all the other updates in the bylaw. Everything else is super awesome.
Okay, I'll call all in favor. Oh, sorry, couldn't see my hand. Opposed? Councillor Brown, thank you very much. We finally got it, Karen. Big project off the table.
Yeah, thank you.
No
We'll
new
be
business. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Imagine we'll be revisiting that, I'm very sure.
Oh, I'm sure we will be. It's not the end of it. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah. No new business, notice, motions, announcements, none. Question period. Please send emails to info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period. Please note, limit to one question only. Comments will not be read.
Oops. There we are.
Oh,
Hi there.
hi.
We did, council did get a question earlier in the night, so which is nice to have them early. This question asks, when you arrange for Steve Morgan to speak to Coal Valley representatives, could you also arrange for staff to be present at the same meeting?
Absolutely, if they would like to be there, absolutely. Mhm. Is that it?
That was it, but we can wait a few more moments here
Yes.
just to see if any more come in.
Mhm. Does everybody notice a change in the weather? It's
Mhm.
getting warmer. The flowers are budding. It's really nice to have a laptop that everything's in order now.
Did you get new tech too?
Yeah, it's really
Nice.
nice. It's the village's laptop that I use now, and I can see all of you. It's very clear, it's very plain, and it's very nice.
Yeah, you need a giant screen, I guess.
Yes, I do. Although the screen wasn't big enough for the last meeting we had. I wasn't sharing it, but it was a lot of people. I mean, had 60 people on a meeting. That's a lot of people.
Okay, there's no more questions coming in, Mayor Baird.
Okay, so we will go close and adjourn, open a meeting. Would somebody like to make the motion?
I recommend that council close to adjourn the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act or labor relations or other employee relations.
Seconder? Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. And motion to adjourn. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. See you shortly.